Hello, I am Christiane Ferralchul. I'm the president of the French National Bar Council, the institution representing the 70,000 French lawyers. I'm speaking from my home in Paris, where the lockdown has been extended until May 11. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to exchange with the presidents of bar associations and law societies of England and Wales, USA, Japan, Germany, Italy, and Canada. It is 6 a.m. in New Orleans, 7 a.m. in Washington and Ottawa, 12 p.m. in London, 1 p.m. in Paris, Germany and Italy, and 9 p.m. in Tokyo. Today, you know, the coronavirus pandemic tops the agenda of all our institutions. The lockdown changes the functioning of justice and disrupts the practice of legal profession. This interview aims to understand the legal challenges our countries are facing and what our respective bar associations, law societies, and governments are doing to face this health crisis in order to learn from each other the good practices and measures implemented. 2 questions will be asked to our 6 speakers. Simon Davis, President of the Law Society of England and Wales, Judy Perry Martinez, President of the American Bar Association, Tatsu Katayama, Acting President of the Japan Federation of Bar Associations, Edith Kinderman, President of the Dutcher and Waldverein, Vivent Salmon, President of the Canadian Bar Association, Professor Salvatore Sica, member of the Consiglio Nazionale Forense. Each president will first present 2 initiatives deployed by its organization to face this crisis, and in a second round of discussion, explain what are the 2 most significant initiatives deployed by your government to support lawyers in your country. However, due to her commitment, President Kinderman will address the 2 topics in direct successions, then leave our meeting. So, first part, 2 initiatives deployed by your organization to face this crisis. Dear Edith, you have the floor. First, to present 2 initiatives deployed by the DAV in Germany to face the crisis. Edith?
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, dear Christiane, for all the initiative for this meeting, and have a good day for all our colleagues. I would like to start with a quote from Albert Camus' famous book, The Plague. What's true of all the evils in the world is true of the plague as well. It helps men to rise above themselves. It's the situation we have at the moment. I sincerely believe that this is the aspiration we need and to which we will live up in these troubling times. The COVID-19 pandemic is a challenge to humanity itself, and its consequences will be long-lasting and devastating on many levels. The loss of countless lives, millions of people being unemployed, and severe consequences for all economies all around the world. It also means that we are all confronted with the same problems. We are all in the same boat, and I therefore very much appreciate the suggestion of the CNB to organize this virtual forum in which we can exchange views and best practices on how to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. Please allow me now to provide you with a quick overview of the German Bar Association and its activities with regard to the coronavirus. The German Bar Association is the oldest independent and representative body of the German legal profession, democratically legitimated by a voluntary membership. Founded in 1871, we have today more than 62,000 members, organized in 257 local bar associations, including 11 local bar associations abroad. As a response to the current situation, we have launched a coronavirus platform for frequently asked questions, FAQs, of lawyers, which is updated daily. It covers all areas of work of lawyers which are being affected by the pandemic. The FAQs include answers to questions about general professional law, how to deal with court hearings, and the obligation to attend training courses, the potential closure of law firms, temporary changes being made to civil and criminal law, and other areas of law, as well as questions of financial support available to lawyers being in economic trouble. Moreover, we have also launched an online platform to facilitate the dialogue and support between lawyers on how to deal with the current situation and exchange best practices between lawyers directly. As in all other countries, the German government has enacted legislation restriction for freedom of movement, the freedom of assembly, and other fundamental liberties, which directly impair us not only as citizens, but also on a professional level when it comes to the exercise of our profession. This is why we have been in a constant dialogue with both the federal government as well as the governments of the German states, Bundesländer, in which we have emphasized the systematic relevance of the legal profession. The access to justice must be guaranteed also in times of a pandemic. A pandemic should also not be used as a pretext to carry out reforms which will further cement the power of a government, as it has happened in Hungary and Poland. Naturally, we are also in a constant dialogue with other members, our members, and they have been informed about all our activities to use them. In addition to the political dialogue taking place with the government in Germany, we have, of course, also continued with issuing expert opinions regarding the numerous legislative proposals in the course of the corona crisis, most of which were adopted in a fast-track procedure. We have commented on legislative changes to German tax law, insolvency law, labor law, the German criminal code, and the above-mentioned restrictions of fundamental liberties. Last week, we have published an opinion with regard to the now hotly debated coronavirus tracking apps for smartphones. To be frank, we are still on a learning curve, but it is yet another opportunity also for us, as for an association, to rise above ourselves. Luckily, modern technology permits all of us to stay connected and to continue working together. For example, we were holding video conferences with representatives of the German Parliament in order to discuss the various legislative proposals. We have also been asked repeatedly in the past few weeks as to whether our annual event, the Deutscher Anwaltstag, will take place or not. In my view, we need to accept the reality that there will be some form of governmental restrictions throughout this year. We know since yesterday evening that there will no be great events in Germany until August 2020. Therefore, we have decided to transform our annual conference, Deutscher Anwaltstag, into a virtual format. We will keep you duly posted in the next weeks about the events, formats, and modalities, and we look forward to meeting you all there. We will have webinars, we will have live streams, we will have political discussions, and we will have a connection between all of us. Unfortunately, I will not be able to participate in the second part of this discussion due to previous other speaking engagement. But do allow me just a short remark with regard to initiatives deployed by the German government. First of all, I believe that the economic consequences will be hard on the legal profession, in particular for smaller law firms. We therefore appreciate that also lawyers are eligible for financial support under the various programs by the federal government and the government of the German states. However, equally important is to safeguard the fundamental principle of access to justice. It must be guaranteed that citizens can still reach and meet their lawyer if they need one, especially in urgent matters. Tribunals and courts must be also put in a position and equipped with the technical resources so that they can operate. This should also include that the legal profession is classified as a systematically important profession. Preventing the judicial system from operating during the COVID-19 pandemic would be the opposite of justice. It would be injustice. So we go on with the court hearings in a restricted way, and we make video conferences, not in criminal cases, but in other cases, in the civil cases. I thank you for your attention, and I look forward to continue our cooperation for the next weeks.
Thank you very much, Edith. I understand that you will have to leave in a few minutes and disconnect. So thank you and good luck for what will follow. And I will ask President Simon Davis to give the information.
Certainly. Well, good afternoon, everybody. And thank you very much, Christiane, for this initiative. It is obviously a great shame that we are unable to be together in the beautiful city of Washington. And instead, I join you from my sitting room. And these are not, by the way, elephant ears behind me. These are the rainbows of hope, which you will find in many houses around me and around England and Wales. And I'm delighted, Christiane, that just as we had previously taken so seriously being part of an international legal community, that we are still continuing that, albeit virtually. The Law Society of England and Wales represents approximately 180,000 solicitors. And those solicitors, those lawyers, represent an extraordinary range of public, from the vulnerable in hospital all the way through to the global business. So when it came to the crisis, our immediate focus was divided into two. The first is to make sure that the wheels of justice continued to turn during the crisis, that the rule of law was still upheld and the public interest protected. At the same time, we needed to make sure that the physical, mental, and financial health of solicitors had to be looked after. As we say, the phrase is, we needed to keep going those who were keeping the system of justice going. So the two initiatives I'd just like to highlight. The first is that we put together a group of criminal law practitioner specialists, civil law practitioner specialists, and family law. And what we do is we have now telephone calls and of course also email contact, but a regular telephone call every single day with the Ministry of Justice, Prison Service, Police Service, all those who are relevant to keeping the wheels of justice turning. And we talk about what we are doing to make sure that the courts are working well. We do it to make sure that those who are going into the courts, which are still open, some of them, that they are safe. And that has meant we have worked together on the development of guidelines which are public, so that anyone going to the court knows what safety and security will look like and what they're entitled to expect, going so far as you will no longer have people putting their hands in your bags when testing you for security. There are all kinds of ways we have to deal with to get around those kind of issues. And we make sure in relation to technology that we are giving ideas and experiences of what is working well with Skype for Business and Zoom and whatever it takes to make the system work. So that is a very key initiative. And I'm sure as we emerge from this crisis, we will all be happy to learn the lessons, the positive lessons from what has happened to us, and one of which has been the removal of the kind of bureaucratic barriers that used to exist between government institutions and the professions. And that is, I think, a very good thing. The second, in relation to the Law Society, how we are looking after the professionals who are looking after the system of justice. We established very fast our COVID task force with a dedicated email link and helplines. We were fortunate because we already had in place a crisis system which would enable every single member of the Law Society to work remotely, so that the moment we had a lockdown, indeed in anticipation of the lockdown, we closed down the Law Society, and all employees and all representatives, including, of course, the office holders and president, would be able to work from home. The job of the task force has been to be out there either in telephone calls or video links, or also we have sent surveys to some 300 firms around England and Wales, asking them what are the problems they're having in any area. And we find ourselves working hard based on what we have learned with the relevant government agencies and, of course, the regulators to make sure that issues such as how does somebody, an elderly person, sign a testament, a will, when there can be no live witnesses? How do you buy and sell a property when you're not allowed to leave your house? How do you buy and sell a business when there's nobody physically present? We are in some cases having to deal with laws which are 200 years old, designed to protect the vulnerable, but now the vulnerable need protecting by not having those protections in place. It's complex, but working very well. So in relation to those two areas, keeping the wheels of justice turning and keeping solicitors active and the laws flexible and working, those of the two I'm very proud of as we speak. Thank you very much.
Now to President Judy Perry Martinez to present the two initiatives deployed by the ABA.
Well, good morning from New Orleans, Louisiana, in the United States, where we are today, sitting in a city like many of yours that have been hard hit by the coronavirus across all of our segments of society. And so we feel for you what we know are the challenges and the many ways in which you're having to address on a daily basis the new reality that we're all facing. As lawyers, it is our time to lead, and the American Bar Association is doing just that. As the largest organization in the world of lawyers and legal professionals, we know that the public is depending on us, and we also know that our members and lawyers across the nation are looking to us to assure that as we go forward and get through this crisis, that we'll come out all the stronger. The American Bar Association has taken several initiatives and steps in order to make sure that we are doing our best for the public and for our profession. Importantly, with regard to the public, in the early days after the first stay-at-home or shelter-in-place orders were issued by various state governments in cities, the mayors of those cities, what we did was establish an ABA task force on legal needs arising out of the 2020 pandemic. That task force utilized the convening power of the American Bar Association and brought together virtually the Conference of Chief Justices of the United States, the National Center for State Courts, the Administrative Office of the Courts for the Federal Courts of the United States, the prosecutors, the defense counsel, and many entities of the American Bar Association, who we know are key stakeholders in the work that we have to do in order to serve the public now and beyond. Importantly, that task force meets every week, and its charge is to identify the legal needs of the public arising out of the pandemic, make recommendations to the American Bar Association about how to address those needs, and critically to mobilize pro bono legal services across our nation in order to meet those needs. The work of the task force has been breathtaking in only the short time it's been in existence, because what we know is that it is taking what is already in place across our communities in terms of legal services and assuring that those will be delivered to individuals as the inevitable rise in legal services and legal needs comes forth. In addition to that task force, the American Bar Association has been working hard to assure its members that they have the resources as they transition to work at home because of the stay-in-place orders across our country, that we are with them as they struggle with stress and with new problems of working a remote practice that any lawyer faces in doing so. So we are offering webinars and all types of resources available on our website on wellness and dealing with new issues, on how the pandemic is impacting communities across our country, the disparate impact it's having on African Americans in our country, on Native Americans, and on so many more. We're addressing racism and hate that we're seeing in some pockets of our country and speaking out on that through videos. We're making sure that child welfare cases are addressed in a way that they need to be, that criminal matters are proceeding, and also importantly, that the legal needs on the civil side that the public are experiencing are being addressed through educational components for lawyers that are helping them understand what they're facing in their practices, as well as what they need to do in order to best serve their clients. What we know, and what we all know as we gather here today, is that resilience is the new reality for all of us. And we also know that we have come to a greater awareness of our new oneness, of how important it is to be there for our neighbors, to be leaders in our communities across our nation, and of course beyond. And so the American Bar Association is leading with resources that it has on its website at americanbar.org/coronavirus task force. And we welcome all of you to look at those resources, to take hold of them and utilize them for your communities across the world. Our collaboration with all of the justice entities in our country, with the many lawyers that we know are already doing good work, will bring us to a better place. And we wish all of you the best of success in addressing the legal needs in your country, because we know that doing this together and learning from each other like we're doing here today will be important for all those months and years to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judy. May I ask next to Acting President Tatsu Katayama to tell us about what's going on in Japan, please?
Thank you, Christian. Japan Federation of Bar Association, I call it JFBA, is the mandatory association consisting of all attorneys practicing in Japan. On behalf of JFBA, I'd like to introduce to you the actions that JFBA has initiated to tackle the challenges posed by COVID-19. As is the case in other jurisdictions, the coronavirus has created new legal problems in Japan too. One of the primary focus of our initiative is to provide legal services particular to COVID-19. We ran a nationwide program to offer SMEs COVID-19 related legal advice over the phone, free of charge for the initial consultation. We are considering to broaden the program to offer such legal advice to the general public as well. There are 52 local bar associations throughout the country. Each bar has its own program depending on demand in their respective regions. Another focus of our initiative is to safeguard justice during such difficult times. The legal issues posed by coronavirus are broad and diverse. I'd like to your attention on a few issues that JFBA is considering. First, we published our opinion on the risks of the disease in detention facilities. Many immigrants without a valid permit to live in Japan are detained in facilities for a long period of time. We are concerned about the safety provided at such facilities. We have urged the government to take due care to ensure safety and to release detained immigrants as much as legally possible. Second, we published another opinion concerning delay of trial of criminal cases. The court started to postpone scheduled trials after the government declared a state of emergency in 7 prefectures. The delay in trial may prolong the period for which suspects are detained. We urge the court to respect the right to a speedy trial, which is protected under the Constitution of Japan. And third, domestic violence and the child abuse have been a problem of our society. The problem has intensified ever since people have been requested to stay at home. We should take measures to tackle this problem. Other foreseeable problems are likely to arise as the turmoil affects our society. We should ensure that our society should receive legal services without disruption. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we go on with President Vivent Salmon for the Canadian Bar Association.
Good morning from Toronto, Canada. For all of us in communities around the world, this is such a challenging time, both socially and economically. But in times of crisis like this, it really shines a light on the integral role lawyers play in defending the rule of law, which is the foundation that supports the pillars of democracy, human rights, and freedom. Really, we must do our best for our members and the public, particularly vulnerable populations, and the leaders and be leaders in our communities. In Canada, the Canadian Bar Association represents 36,000 lawyers from across Canada, and the CBA is a conduit to bring stakeholders together to discuss the response of the justice system to COVID-19 pandemic crisis on both a macro and micro level. On the macro level, the CBA has launched a task force that brings together members of the Canadian legal profession with key players in government and the justice system. Our work is going to be looking at issues as they evolve through the crisis. So we will look at immediate issues, legal issues flowing from restrictions on social activities. We will seek solutions to the evolving need to deliver legal and justice services as the restrictions continue. And then again, as society transitions into a recovery period. The task force will also look at systemic changes necessary for the justice and legal systems to more effectively respond to legal needs in Canada, particularly in the face of future public health crises, which experts unfortunately have assured us we can expect. On the micro level, CBA members are working with government departments and courts to solve issues in each area of law and to quickly get that information to our members. So as lawyers, we can continue to serve the needs of our clients. The problems, of course, as we all know, are multifaceted. The longer the courts are closed, the longer people are denied justice, and the longer court backlogs grow. And at the same time, lawyers, sometimes many, especially in the litigation bar, can become less viable. And we are trying to address all of these issues. In time of rapid change, what really lawyers need most is reliable information about the impact these changes have on their professional and personal lives. After a recent experience with SARS and H1N1, the Canadian Bar Association Labor section saw the need for a guide on dealing with pandemic issues in the workplace. And the creation of that guide meant that the Canadian Bar Association was ready with relevant information at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. We quickly added a companion podcast to reach even more of our members. And these are all available all on the CBA website. At both the national and local levels, the CBA has quickly put together professional development programs, podcasts, and other resources focused on COVID-19. And we produce webinars that include interviews and discussions with health experts. Others have looked at topics ranging from how to effectively manage your business from home, solo law firms, using technology effectively to stay sane, really, in these very turbulent times. And we've created resource hubs on our website to update members on developments in the justice system, such as court closures, as well as news about webinars and other resources to help Canadian lawyers better serve their clients. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now it's Professor Salvatore Sica. Can we know what's going on in Italy and what are the two measures?
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you to Conseil National des Barreaux for this invitation and the President, Christian. The Consiglio Nazionale Forense as a daily institutional interlocution with government and the Minister of Justice about urgent measures in the field of justice. With a special attention to right of defense that cannot be limited in this period by pandemic, and about these topics, postponement of hearing and suspension of terms, organizational measures to counter the epidemiological emergency and contain a negative implication for the performance of judicial authorities. A special attention for criminal law measures, measures relating to the participation of detainees in criminal law proceedings, communication and notification, modalities for the conduct of interviews with detained person, extension of court of assizes and court of appeal session, provision on the reasonable length of the proceedings, connection that can be used for the remote holding of civil and criminal hearings, and so even in the field of administrative justice, and urgent measures in the field of accounting justice. The Consiglio Nazionale Forense made many proposals almost all have been accepted by the Minister of Justice. In consideration of the emergency situation, the Consiglio Nazionale Forense has provided the suspension until 30 September 2020 of the financial contribution due by the lawyers. In addition, in the spirit of solidarity and support for lawyers, the CNF has decided to allocate the sum of 250,000 euros for the investment of health tools useful for dealing with the ongoing emergency. To counter the spread of the COVID-19 virus and to support lawyers, further measures will be discussed. The Cassa Nazionale di Previdenza e di Assistenza Forense has recently taken some initiatives to support lawyers. The creation of a 10 million solidarity fund in support of the families of the lawyers who have lost their lives during the pandemic, a contract for the provision of 5 million euro to compensate half of the law firm rents paid by lawyers in this field. Every day, Consiglio Nazionale Forense is working about new measures to develop the law after the pandemic. That is, we think that the most important problem is that the emergency law must not be definitive law in the proceedings and in the hearings.
Thank you very much, Salvatore. So it's now my turn. So in France, on the one hand, the French National Bar Council launched two big volunteer projects to help the French citizens, including the more vulnerable ones during this crisis. First, the first one is we called it Avocat solidaire, supportive lawyers, an operation during which from 24th of March to 6th of April, lawyers offered their services over the phone to all individuals and professionals seeking a first level of legal information on the consequences of the COVID-19. So we had 5,500 telephone calls took place, which enabled thousands of French citizens to receive this information on their rights in the context of COVID-19 concerning remote work, economic measures to support business, family law, all subjects of uncertainty in the daily lives of French citizens. On Friday, the 10th of April, we launched a free hotline on domestic violence issues. The hotline is staffed by members of the French National Bar Council who listen to the victims of gender violence and refers them to the appropriate lawyer to help them through the legal proceedings. The aim is to enable victims to benefit from an emergency protection order, a French measure to protect the victims of domestic violence. It seemed to us essential to involve lawyers in the government alert system put in place in pharmacies, in drugstores. So on the other hand, the French National Bar Council has initiated judicial action against the French government on the issue of administrative detention centers for undocumented migrants, and on the situation where lawyers intervene without any protective equipment, no gloves, no hydroalcoholic gels, no masks, no protective equipment being made available to them, in order to denounce the inertia of public authorities in the face of the current and immediate danger to which lawyers who are auxiliaries to the courts are exposed when they defend their clients. So these are the two major actions in direction of the citizens. So I suggest that now, having been through the interesting tour de table, we can go through a second tour de table in order to work on the most significant initiatives deployed by your government to support lawyers in your country. You understand that we finished with a tour de table which reflects the solidarity, the humanity, but also the creativity of lawyers. We are supportive, but we are also hard hit by the crisis. So your responses and the responses of our governments are interesting. So could you present the two most significant initiatives deployed by your government to support lawyers in your country? And I suggest to start with President Simon Davis. Simon?
Thank you very much, President. I think the two areas I'm going to focus on, the one is which was focused on lawyers, and the second is very much more on the public, but of course includes the lawyers. We just start with the lawyers. Importantly, of course, we have always recognized that there are huge challenges for this government, and indeed any government around the world, seeking to deal with the balancing demands of keeping people healthy, but also keeping the country economically viable. We do understand the government therefore has a great deal of stresses and strains upon it. And also, it is not our desire for there to be any kind of special pleading for lawyers, bearing in mind that the whole of the country is in serious difficulties. In relation to lawyers, what the government has done in order to enable the children of lawyers to go into schools, which by and large are shut down, is to give some lawyers, but not all, the status of what is called key workers. And these are the ones who are representing people, for example, who are in institutions, representing those who need to have wills, testaments executed quite sadly at late stages in their lives, and for those who are involved in imminent court hearings, which of course need to be dealt with. And at the same time, I referenced in our previous segment that there are calls every single day with the Ministry of Justice and other agencies. One of the agencies who's on that call every day is the Legal Aid Agency, which is responsible for the funding of lawyers, particularly criminal lawyers, whose clients cannot otherwise afford them. And in relation to that, measures have now been taken to increase and facilitate rapid cash flow into those lawyers, rather than them having to wait for the usual period for sorting out of paperwork and the like. So that is very welcome. In relation to the measures for the public, which the government has taken, of course, the government is seeking to ensure that people are not all going to go bankrupt as a result of this. And therefore, there's a particular scheme which is called the furlough scheme. The furlough scheme is one where it means that if you have workers who either are unoccupied because they cannot do their work, or there is just generally not enough work for them, then they are put on furlough, which means that the government will pay 80% of their salary up to a monthly cap of £2,500 for a defined period. That will also apply to law firms, and law firms are therefore using that to support them. There are other financial measures which have been announced to support business which don't naturally fit with law firms, and we're working with the government to see them fit with law firms which otherwise will find themselves in a very serious position if this lockdown continues for much further. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon. May I ask President Judy Perry-Martinez to give the ABA proposals?
Thank you very much. Yes, the American Bar Association has a rich history of issuing policy statements in an effort to shore up and maintain various aspects of the rule of law in our country and beyond. And in this instance, there is no difference. We have issued statements regarding safety precautions that must be taken in jails and prisons. We have issued statements regarding the release of the infirmed and elderly from prisons because of the coronavirus spread. And we have urged and applauded measures being taken at the local level by prosecutors and Department of Correction officials and judges as they assess and determine if nonviolent criminally convicted individuals can be released as a public safety measure. That work is ongoing. We've also urged the suspension of immigration hearings with regard to unaccompanied minors because of the fact that they are so at risk in these detention centers, in the transport to and in hearings in the immigration courts. And significantly, we've issued statements regarding the quarantine powers of the state government and how that interacts with the federal government in the United States. Probably most importantly, in terms of statements of late has been the issuance of statements regarding the fact that essential services under the shelter-in-place and stay-at-home orders of various governments should include legal services for the very reasons that my colleague Simon talked about, because we know that lawyers are essential to carrying on the business of our country to make sure that rights are protected, whether it's somebody who has a family member who has been struck by the coronavirus, individuals who have been come before courts and need counsel, those with domestic violence challenges, and so much more. And those statements have been very effective in what they have urged for the government to take up. Also significantly, we have issued early on a statement in support of supplemental funding and appropriations to our Legal Services Corporation, which in great part addresses the civil legal needs of low income and the near poor across our country. The stimulus bill afforded about $50 million of additional supplemental funding for Legal Services Corporation. And just this past week, we urged an additional $50 million be funded in order for them to carry out their work. Our lawyers are able to access and gain some assistance from the stimulus package that was passed by Congress, in particular the Paycheck Protection Program. And we are working hard to make sure that they have information about that as that program proceeds. It is so important that we keep our lawyers working so that they can serve those who we're all committed to serve. And in that note, we're working hard to assure that information is flowing as well as that lawyers are getting the assistance that they need.
Thank you so much, Judy. What about Japan? Acting President Tatsuo Katayama.
Thank you. There is no governmental initiative to support lawyers particularly. JFPA is a self-regulatory body and is responsible for supervision of all lawyers practicing in Japan. Although a large number of our staff members are working remotely from home, we continue to provide services to our members. We have opened on our website a portal page relating to COVID-19 related legal issues so that our members may be kept updated on the developments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we go to Canada with the Canadian Bar Association, President Vivent Salmon.
Thank you. So with respect to the two most significant initiatives developed by the Canadian government, so first of all, the federal and provincial governments in Canada have identified lawyers as essential workers during this crisis. So despite the lockdowns, lawyers can still serve their clients, whether they be families in the middle of difficult breakups or businesses trying to get much needed supplies across the border. into the US particularly. Still, with the courts closed or working on reduced schedules, some lawyers will see their workloads and incomes reduced. And that is why the CBA is working to ensure that government programs to compensate Canadians and businesses for financial loss due to the pandemic crisis take into account the realities of the practice of law. So, for example, the Canadian government had initially offered a wage subsidy of up to 10% to eligible employers. This was limited to certain smaller corporations, nonprofit organizations, and registered charities. But many Canadian lawyers do not operate in corporations. So the program was ultimately expanded to include individuals other than trust and partnerships to increase the subsidy to 75% and to raise the income threshold. The bottom line is that more lawyers can take advantage of the program. Canadian lawyers are also eligible for business loans with no interest for a short period of time. And we're also undertaking a myriad of advocacy efforts, working with governments to ensure that responses meet both human rights obligations and economic needs. And that could be variances on limitation periods when government and court offices are closed, requirements to witness signatures in person. This is particular, of course, with wills and estates when physical distancing measures are in place. We've heard a little bit from other countries as well about the heightened risk for prisoners and detainees and for the workers, caregivers, and lawyers who must be in and out of these kind of institutions, whether they're healthcare centers or prisons. And the last one would be amendments to the Competition Act to ensure that businesses can efficiently supply products and services in the country. So these are some of the measures that the Canadian government has undertaken that directly impact lawyers with regard to how these government programs support Canadian lawyers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we go to Italy with Professor Salvatore Sicca.
Well, there are many general and specific measures to reduce the impact of crisis. The decree of March 2020 established the suspension of the terms for tax obligations, which expires during the pandemic period. These fulfillments shall be performed later without penalties. Specifically for persons carrying out business, art, or professional activities with income characteristics identified in the decree, is provided a suspension of payments resulting from self-tax declaration of VAT and compulsory insurance premiums. In addition, the decree provides that for persons and professionals having their tax domicile registered or head office in one of the listed municipalities mostly affected by COVID-19 epidemic, tax payments falling due during the period are suspended regardless of the volume of revenues and compensation or related tax demands. As regards to specific measures for lawyers, the Cassa Nazionale di Previdenza and Assistenza Forense has provided the suspension of all payments and social security obligation until September 2020. This measure is valid for each lawyer without limitation of enrollment, age, or income. Moreover, the lawyers registered to the Cassa Nazionale di Previdenza e Assistenza Forense can access to a bonus for the purchase of babysitting services up to a maximum of 600 euros. Finally, the Cassa Forense and Unisalute, that is a collective health insurance coverage, have agreed to provide an additional guarantee regarding the COVID-19 infection valid for all members. The cost of the guarantee will be paid by the Cassa Nazionale di Previdenza. The duration of the coverage is retroactive with effect from the 1st of January 2020 and will cover the events occurred and diagnosed from the date until the end of this year.
Thank you very much, Salvatore. So what about French side? Our French government adopted various economic measures to support the French economy. However, lawyers were not included in most of the measures. So I want here to stress the Conseil national des barreaux avocats' work in order to include lawyers in these measures. For example, the French government set up a solidarity fund, which makes possible to grant immediate aid of 1,500 euros to enterprises impacted by COVID-19. So thanks to the action, lawyers will be now able to benefit from this aid, although the conditions are very strict. But we opened the door on this fund, on this solidarity fund. The French government also granted an exceptional payment of daily allowance for parents who would have no other possibility for the care of their children than to stay at home. Parents of children under 16 years old and parents of children with disabilities. So here again, these are strict conditions, but hopefully it's possible now for lawyers. Following the alert, we sent to the Minister of Health a per diem will also be provided to lawyers for child custody. So we are trying here, as you can see, to be sure that lawyers are not forgotten by the government, but we must understand that lawyers are not considered as key actors. I think that it's the case in other countries. I understand that it's a case in your country, Simon, but it's not the case in all countries. And I believe, and I'm personally very much convinced, that lawyers have an important role in this period, in this very important crisis, and that there is a lot to do in order to preserve a lot of rules, liberties, and this is it's important for all society. So we have a lot of work before us. Thank you for your contribution. I understand that we finish in 2 minutes. Do you want, is any of you want to say a word before we finish this session?
I will say a word. Thank you, Christiane, for organizing this. I think on behalf of all of us, I can say we really appreciate being given the opportunity, and we hope that all our colleagues across the world, especially lawyers, will be safe with their families, and that the administration of justice will continue and go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Christiane, and thank you for your final words that are my words. I think the same.
Thank you.
What a remarkable group of colleagues. Thank you so much for joining on this early morning. It's been a privilege.
Thank you.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, all of you, and we'll keep in contact.
Good luck, good work.
Bye-bye.
The
Thank
example
you very much.
how you keep the rule of law keeps going even in a crisis.
Indeed. This is the final word. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you.